Shining Armour never made it to Ponyville. No one really knew what happened to him. Rumours did spread around of what could have happened to him. Did he flee somewhere? Did he get out? Did he go back? Or did he even make it out alive? Back in Ponyville, things weren't going too well. After the funerals of those who died in Equestria, supplies started to run low. Ponyville had to gain help from other towns to keep itself going. Appaloosa were the first to step in as best as they can to try and supply them with food. For the apple season that month was rough going, and soon they had to withdraw. Transport into Appaloosa was still up and running, but the mayor refused to hand out any more supplies to those living in Ponyville. Cloudsdale also stepped in around the same time Appaloosa fucked off. Cloudsdale made a promise to keep providing Ponyville with rain and water, due to the fact Equestria also cut off the running water in Ponyville, in fear that the virus would be carried by the flowing water. So it all looked like it would be fine. But we were concerned about the attitudes that Appaloosa held against this decision. You see, Appaloosa are greedy fucking rats. They want everything for themselves and they don't care who they fucking harm to get it. But now that Ponyville was safe from running out of supplies, things looked like they would go back to normal. However, a few days later the doctor and I were sent to the Apple family farm that belonged to Applejack and her brother, granny and little sister. We were sent there after we got a message about the family finding a sick pony just by the edge of their farm. Me and the doctor quickly headed up to the farm to see what was going on. When the Apple family let us in, they quickly told us about what happened and how they found him, and led us up to the room where the sick pony was there and waiting for us. And when we entered the room, we couldn't believe our eyes. We couldn't even believe that the Apple family didn't see it. This wasn't any sick pony. This was Shining Armour. This was the prince that was been missing for days. He was lying in the Apple family bed. His face was pale and covered in dirt and scratches, like he was attacked by some type of wild animal. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He was dribbling like he was in some type of trance almost. But a closer look found that Shining was not himself. It was too late for him. He was infected. Whether it was from Equestria or escaping it, we had no idea what to do next. I remember during that moment that Shining grabbed the doctor's arm trying to speak, but it sounded like something was holding him back from doing so. When we took a look at him, we found that his tongue was severely butchered. Chunks of it were missing like something had been eaten away at it. We told the Apple family to wait outside and we would try our best to see what we can do. We didn't tell them what we knew. We didn't tell them that it was Shining Armour. We didn't want them to cause any panic. Shining knew what was going on, but was too weak to move or even tell us due to what happened to his tongue. At this point there was only one thing for us to do, and I could tell in Shining's eyes that he knew what we were planning. We were left with two options. The first option is that we could treat him or try to find a way to slow down the virus, but run the risk of that treatment doing nothing and leaving the virus to take over his whole body, which we didn't want to do because, like I explained before, no one knew what happened once the virus took full control of the body. The experiments that were taking place, the ponies were actually killed before the virus took full control. No one has ever seen what happens when the virus takes full control of the body. No one knows. Apart from the fact that they show an increase in levels of aggression the more infected they get. And we couldn't take that risk. Shining Armour, he may be all these things I've called him, but he is a strong pony. If we leave him with the family and the virus takes full control of his body, God knows what will happen to them, which left us with option B, to painlessly euthanize him and stop his suffering. This was the option me and the doctor voted for. We weren't proud of our decision that day, but we panicked. I mean, what would you do? You were standing there next to a pony that could possibly kill an entire family, even more if the virus took full control of his body. What would you fucking do? Sit there and play happy families? We had no idea what this virus was capable of, so we didn't really want to take any chances. We would be putting a whole family at risk, one of them being a member of the Elements of Harmony. We decided to tell him that we would be giving him a dosage which would help him relax and help him sleep while we try and flush out whatever was inside him. He nodded, believing that, but I knew deep inside he knew what was coming next. We filled up a needle that was filled with a drug that is used to put down animals. But before we did that, the doctor asked me to collect samples of his blood before we would infect him with the dose. The doctor wanted to experiment with the samples to find out more data about them. The doctor was concerned about the lack of info we had, and if an outbreak did break out in Ponyville, we needed to be prepared for the worst. We needed to know what the main symptoms were and what happens when it takes full control. We left the Apple family 4 hours later that day, lying to them saying that Shining Armour was just asleep and that he will be okay in a few hours later. We wanted to make it like it was natural causes, so like he passed away in his sleep. We didn't want them knowing what we did. We headed back to the doctor's office to experiment with the samples we have collected. We carried out our tests for 3 days trying to find any clues to how it started, how it spreaded, how it affects us, as like I explained before, infected ponies didn't share all the same symptoms as each other. But our main purpose in this experiment was to find out what happens when the virus takes full control of its host. However, some of these results were just impossible, as we needed to know how it worked and how it evolved, and you can only do so much with tools and microscopes. Soon, some ponies living around us got concerned about what we were doing, and to make sure we didn't cause any panic at what we were trying to achieve, we decided to flee our home. We decided to take a short weekend away to Appaloosa, just to relax and continue our research in peace. When we reached Appaloosa, the ponies were welcoming and kind to us. However, we didn't like the looks we got from the sheriff and his deputies. We rented out a cabin just a few miles from the town. We had no idea what we were meant to do now to study how the virus worked. All we had were the 2 remaining test tubes of Shining Armour's infected blood with us. That's when the doctor got an idea. It was a sick idea, like a twisted sick idea. But he needed to know how the virus mutated or how it worked. But the idea he had was fucking disgusting. Appaloosa had a tribe of buffalo just a few miles away from them. The doctor wanted to inject some of them with the blood we had from Shining. When I heard that idea, I refused to take part in his plan and tried everything to stop him, but that didn't work. As that night, while I was asleep, he left the cabin and travelled down to where the tribe were living and injected 4 of the buffalo with the blood, 2 of them being fully grown males, 1 of them a fully grown female, and 1 of them a young buffalo child. I found all this out the next morning after finding notes on the kitchen table explaining in full detail the experiment he was carrying out. I was so pumped with anger at what I was reading, completely sick to my stomach at what he was doing. If this is what the doctor had planned, if the doctor thought that this was somehow okay, then we are no better than the fucking princess. I looked around the house for him to see if he was there, but he wasn't. Probably gone to check on the buffalo that same morning. So while he was out, I packed up all my things and left. It was all I could do. The damage was done, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I stayed at the hotel in Appaloosa for a few days due to the fact the trains were playing up again. Again, the locals were friendly, and everything seemed to be fine. But soon, a tragedy hit the town of Appaloosa. It was reported in the papers as the Appaloosa Massacre. It all happened during the Appaloosa Rodeo, when the leader of the Buffalo tribe charged into the town during the Appaloosa Rodeo and charged into the rodeo, killing over 10 ponies who were there that day. One of them being Applejack's cousin Braveburn, who heroically tried to help ponies escape the show, but he ended up having his skull crushed when he was knocked down by the buffalo. The town mourned over the deaths of their fallen ponies. I also appeared at the funerals to pay my respects. But you're probably wondering what happened to the buffalo. Well, sadly, due to how out of control he was during the time, he was shot dead at the scene. After the funeral, I quickly headed down to the cabin to see the doctor and show him what his vile experiment has done. But he wasn't there. But on the kitchen table of the cabin was a huge amount of documents, which were the result of the vile test that he carried out. The documents on the table showed that the amount of time it would take for the virus to take over would be based on how strong the host's body was. The weaker you were, the quicker the virus would infect you. The documents also showed that weaker ponies that were infected with the virus would show less painful symptoms than those who had stronger systems. This would also be the same for aggression as well. Those who had stronger body build-up and those who were stronger would show even more violent and aggressive behaviour. The results on the documents found that symptoms didn't matter or affect how the virus mutated or worked. However, each one of the infected victims all had the same first symptom, and that was coughing. The virus was airborne, and if you coughed, that was the only warning you got. Coughing meant you had it. It was the first symptom that every single infected pony and buffalo would show before the other symptoms kicked in. Even with all the results that the doctor has found, there was one result which the doctor still needed to find. There was no document showing what would happen when the virus took full control of the pony or buffalo or whoever was infected. That was the only result that the doctor didn't find. The buffalo that caused the Appaloosa Massacre that day, he wasn't even close to the last stage. The buffalo was suffering. He didn't know what he was doing. He was one of the victims that was very, very strong, and because of that, even if he wasn't close to the last stage, he would show mass amounts of aggression and violence to anything that got in his way. This was the information that we needed. If we were able to get this to any higher power, even the princess herself, maybe we have a chance of containing the virus, or even finding a cure. At this point I knew exactly what I needed to do. I needed to gather up all the results and the information and every single document I could find in that cabin. Every single document on that experiment, I needed to gather them up and get back to Ponyville fast.